Hi, I am Balaji Chippada and welcome back to my channel. In continuation of our Python series for data science, in this video, let's learn about arguments and parameters in functions. In previous video, we have learned how to define a function and what are parameters and how you can use multi-written statements, and we have explored so many real life examples as well. But we haven't explored too much about parameters and what are the kind of parameters that a function can take. All of these things we will cover in this video. On a high level, there are four types of parameters or arguments that it can take. One is positional arguments, and then default arguments, and then we have keyword arguments and arbitrary arguments. So I will not explain all of these things in theory, but we will directly jump into the Google Colab notebook to understand all of these in detail with code examples as well. So without any delay, let's get started. Now let's understand the difference between arguments and parameters. Arguments comes into picture when you are talking about function definition. When you are doing a function definition, inside these parentheses you will give the elements, right? These are called parameters, and whenever you are calling that function and you are passing the values or actual values to these parameters, right? So these actual values are called arguments. So I'll just repeat it again. In the function definition, the elements that are present inside your parenthesis are called parameters. And while you are calling the function, the actual values that you are passing through are called arguments of the function. And there are different kinds of arguments. Now let's understand about positional arguments. As the name suggests, it depends on the position or the order of arguments that you are passing through. Now let's take this example and execute this. So here I am calling the function add and I am passing the value 2 and 3, and inside the function I am printing the value of a and printing the value of b and returning the value a plus b. If I see the output, the value of a is 2. That means the first element or the first argument that you passed when calling your function will be saved inside the first parameter, and the value of b, which is actually 3, is getting saved into the second parameter because it is the second position while you are calling the function. And because of this, these are called positional arguments, as they are retaining the sequence or the order or the position of the arguments that you are passing through. Now if I call the same function, but if I reverse these values, I will get the same output because 2 plus 3 and 3 plus 2 is same. But if you see the value of a, which is 3 in this case, and in the first example it is 2, and value of b is 2, in the first example it is 3. So basically in the first example, a value is getting 2 and b value is getting 3. As they shifted the values in reverse in the second cell, the a will be saved into 3 and 2 will be saved into b. So these are called positional arguments. Now I have this function call with values 3 and 2, and when I directly call the function, a is getting 3 and b is getting 2 based upon their positions. What if I want to keep this order, but I want to assign a equal to 2 and b equal to 3? Can I do it? Yes, that is where keyword arguments comes into picture. So instead of you relying on the sequential assignment of Python, you can directly say call the function and pass the value and give the parameter as well. These are called keywords. Okay, you are saying there are two parameters in the function, and when you are calling the function, you are directly saying assign a equal to 2 and b equal to 3. So directly it will get the output and your values will get assigned accordingly because you have given this. Now what if I say like this? Now I will say I will give b equal to 3 initially and a equal to 2 in the next. And if I execute this, even now the value of a is 2 because we are specifically or explicitly mentioning that a should take 2 while doing a function call. So these are called keyword arguments. Let's take one more example. Keyword arguments are basically you need to pass your arguments explicitly by defining the parameter name as well. So I have this function person info and it takes two parameters, name and age, and I'm just printing name and years old. And when I'm passing this information 30 and Alice via this function called person info, 30 is Alice years old. This is not a right sentence, right? Technically I should pass Alice in the first. That means this is how I should get. and if this would be something like this, and this would make sense now because the output says Alice is 30 years old, which is what I want. But you might get confused sometimes like this if you are using or depending on positional arguments. That is why you need to specifically mention like this. So here in this scenario, you will not get confused and the output will be same as you expected. So these are called keyword arguments. Now I have this function. Okay, let me keep it here, code, and I will execute this. And when I say print person, and I will give only one parameter or one argument, so what happens in this case? It will say person info, which is the function name, is missing one required positional argument, age. So by default, Python understood that the value that you provided inside a function call, this will be assigned to a variable called name, and it is still looking for a value to assign to age parameter, which you haven't mentioned here. That is why it is throwing this error. So how to handle this kind of situation? So that is where default arguments comes into picture. So what I would do is, while doing a function definition itself, I will say age equal to 35. For example, let's say in the function definition itself. Okay, and I will execute this. And if I say only name equal to Bob, by default, it is taking this name into this name parameter, and then age, because I haven't mentioned here, it will look for the default values that is present while function definition, and it will use that value. Hopefully that is clear. Now I will do like this. So I would say print person Balaji, and I would change the age to 27, and I will do this, and I will execute this. So here it is working fine. What if I will not give my keyword? So how will it work? This will work because by default Python will consider this value and save it under the name parameter, and because age is not specified here, it will take the age which is present inside the function definition. Now what if I want to overwrite my age? Let's say I want to have like this. I would say Balaji, and let's say I will get 50. So what happens in this scenario? Will I get Balaji is 27 years old, or will I get Balaji is 50 years old? Let's try it out. Balaji is 50 years old. Now understand this scenario. So I call this function person info, and initially I provided Balaji, and this Balaji will be assigned to the name variable, which is fine. And I also pass the value as 50. Okay, this 50 should technically be saved into age parameter because my default value is 27, and I am passing the value explicitly. This 27 will be overwritten by 50, and this will return Balaji is 50 years old. Now what if I will not provide this value again? Now it will refer back to my default value, which is 27, and it will print Balaji is 27 years old. Hopefully that is clear. If you have any queries so far in this session regarding default arguments, keyword arguments, and positional arguments, please let me know in the comment section below, and I will reply to each and every one of you. And the next important arguments are arbitrary arguments. Now, why do we need arbitrary arguments if we already have positional arguments and keyword arguments and default arguments? In all of these scenarios, you have fixed number of parameters, right? So in the default arguments, you have name and age, and you are passing one of the parameter as a default parameter. And in the keyword arguments, you have fixed number of arguments or parameters. Now, are there any scenarios where you don't know how many values that you want to pass to a function? Right? There might be scenarios, right? You might not know how many arguments will be passed to your function. So in that scenario, Python allows you to handle this kind of situation through arbitrary arguments. Now inside arbitrary arguments, there are two types. One are positional arbitrary arguments, and second one is keyword arbitrary arguments. These are often used when you want to pass a variable number of non-keyword arguments. Now let's understand this in detail. Here, I defined a function add all numbers. Inside this, I'm giving something called star args. We will understand this in a bit. Okay, let's go with the flow. And then I'm returning sum of args. Okay, now let's execute this and see. I'm doing a function called add all numbers, and I'm passing four numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's execute this. If you see here, I have only one element called args, and I'm having star behind it. Okay, And I am passing 4 elements towards this function. Even though I have written only one element, how am I able to pass 4 elements when doing a function call? So this is the magic of arbitrary arguments. So what it will do is, whenever or how many number of elements that you pass to this function, all of these will be saved under args parameter. And then I am saying sum of all the parameters, which is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, I am getting 10. So to understand this in detail, what I would do is I would print args. Now execute this. If you see, the value of args is tuple of 1, 2 and 3, 4, and I'm having sum of all the elements and returning the value as 10. Hopefully that is clear. Now I can just use for loops as well. Now here I have print all function, and I'm using a positional arbitrary argument star args, and then first arg in args print arg, and I'm just calling this function by passing 3 elements, apple, banana and cherry, and we have apple, banana and cherry because of this for loop. Now understand the significance of star and args. So what is args? So this is just a parameter name. Okay, instead of args you can use my name as well, you can use any kind of name, but using args is an industry standard. And what is star signifies? Star signifies there is uneven number of elements that needs to be passed, and all of this is getting saved into the parameter Balaji. Then why am I using only star args? Because this is an industry standard. Now let's understand this in detail in code again. So here, instead of doing star args, I will say star Balaji, and I will just say print Balaji and return sum of Balaji. If I execute this, this will also work properly, but this is not at all recommended to modify these arbitrary arguments as star Balaji or star some other name. So instead, it is always better to use star arg, so that anyone who looks at this code will be easy for them to understand what is happening. Now I can pass any number of elements actually, guys. There is no limit. So this is the magic of using arguments, arbitrary arguments. Initially we have what? Positional arguments, right? In which it depends on the order of the elements that you are passing through. And then we have keyword arguments, in which it doesn't depend on the order, but it depends on the parameter naming inside the arguments as well, right? So likewise, we have arbitrary positional arguments using star args. So likewise, we have arbitrary keyword arguments, and we call them as KWARGS. And instead of using only one star, we will signify with 2 stars. Hopefully that is clear. Okay, now I have this function person info, and I'm printing kwargs, and then info equal to, I'm initializing some string, and while passing through the dictionary, I will explain why it is a dictionary. I'm just doing some manipulation, I'm returning this info. Now let's execute this. Okay, now I will call this function person info, and I'm saying name Carol, age 28, city New York. If you see, there is only one parameter here, but I am able to give 3 parameters here. So whenever you are saying like this, so what Python will interpret is, it will convert this into a dictionary like this, and the key will be your parameter name. This is the one, and the value will be the value that you are passing, Carol. And then second one will be age 28, and third one will be city New York. And this dictionary will be passed towards kwargs. Hopefully that is clear. Because you have keywords as well, that is why it is creating a dictionary. When I pass this, when I print kwargs, it is printing me a dictionary with the definition that I have explained now, and I'm just iterating to the dictionary, and I'm printing this information. The difference between keyword arbitrary arguments and positional arbitrary arguments is just like positional arguments and keyword arguments, but here we can pass any number of elements or arguments towards the function if you are using arbitrary arguments. So we have one more example. The output is self-explanatory, just like the above example. We can pass any number of keyword arguments in this keyword arbitrary arguments. Hopefully that is clear. Now let's take an example that mixes both positional arguments and arbitrary arguments as well. Let's say I have an function called setup profile, in which I have getting name, email, arguments and keyword arguments. And then I'm printing the name, I'm printing the email, and for argument in args, which is positional arbitrary arguments, I'm printing all of those. And because KW args comes mostly with dictionaries, I'm doing a dictionary iteration, I'm printing this. Now let's execute this. So I'm setting up a profile for a person called Jane Doe, and email is jane@example.com. And these two values, this value will be saved under name and this value will be saved under email because of the positions that they are in. And the next loves Python and write code, these two will be inside args because of the positions, and we haven't specifically given any elements to save those. And the remaining keyword arguments will be saved under this kw args. By using this kind of format, I can provide as much information as possible when setting up a profile, even though my functions are not initially able to take all of these parameters. Because of the usage of args and kw args, I was able to do this. Hopefully that is clear. Now let's execute this. Here I have name as Jane Doe and email, and we have the attributes as loves Python, writes code, and we are iterating to the dictionary, age 28, occupation developer, and hobby cycling. See, so this is the beauty of having keyword arbitrary arguments and positional arbitrary arguments and normal arguments as well. Let's talk about unpacking arguments. Here, if you see, I have provided all of these values inside a function call. Can I do something different but I get the same output like this? Yes, that is where unpacking arguments comes into picture. Let's say I have a function definition in which it takes three parameters, name, age, and city, and I'm printing something using all of these three parameters. Now I could say person info, and I will say Balaji 27 Pune. Okay, Pune is a string, so I should give like this. And if I execute this, I will get Balaji is 27 years old and lives in Pune. So is there any other way that I can pass these values to the function? Yes, that is where unpacking comes into picture. So what I would do is I would get all the values and I will create a list out of it. And I will use star. As I mentioned before, star indicates all the elements of the parameter that you are passing. And I will just say details and I will call that function by passing this details. And I will get the same output. Balaji is 27 years old and lives in Pune. Instead of passing all of my arguments doing a function call, I created one variable list in which I have saved all the arguments, and then I am passing that to my function call. Even in this way, you can have your details added up. The same thing you can do for dictionary as well. But for dictionaries, if you are doing keyword arguments, then you have to use star star. Hopefully that is clear. Now that we understand about all of these arguments, positional arguments, keyword arguments, arbitrary keyword arguments, and arbitrary positional arguments and default arguments, now let's take a real life example and understand this. Why do we need all of these things? In most scenarios in software development, we used logging, right? Logging is extensively used to track the errors, performance monitoring, and status check. There are a lot of advantages of logging. I will not go through this in detail, but what logging helps us to do is it will help us to track what is happening inside the big piece of code. So what I would say is I would create a function called log message, and it takes arbitrary positional arguments and arbitrary keyword arguments. I am not defining anything here because I'm not sure what I'm about to log. So that is where these will help you. So inside this, I am using a datetime module. We will understand about modules in the later videos. I'm getting the timestamp by using the module called datetime. What it will return is at this point of time when this is getting executed, what is the current timestamp. And then from the messages parameter, I am just joining using a string join method. And then I'm creating a new parameter called log entry in which I am adding the timestamp and the message that we passed via function call. And then because we already have a keyword arguments, I am iterating through my keyword arguments. I'm just adding all of those information to the log entry, and I'm printing log entry at the last. Now if I call the function called log messages and I give this message application started, no errors, and then urgency equal to low, user ID equal to 12345, what it will do is these first two things will be saved under messages, And because these are having keywords, these will be saved under additional data, which is a keyword argument. And I'm just passing calling this function, and I will get the output like this. If I execute this, I will get the output at this timestamp. The code execution has been started and there are no errors, urgency is low, and user ID is 12345. And when we do this log message function call, it is saying at this timestamp we called it again and unexpectedly something happened, because we're just passing that unexpected something error happened, and then we have error code as 500 and severity is high. By looking at this log information, we get to know what is happening inside your code. So like this, we can use arbitrary arguments to enhance our coding capabilities. And that's it, guys. That is there everything to learn about parameters and arguments in Python. Hopefully, I have made this topic very easy to understand with a lot of examples. And if you are liking the content, please do subscribe and click that bell icon to get notified daily. And I also hope that you gain some new knowledge by watching my video. And that's it for this video, and we'll meet in the next video. Bye bye.